Okay, so let me first summarize what we did in last 5 days. I think this is our sixth session. Prior to this, we already had around 5 sessions, and what we did in 5 sessions is actually the very basic and fundamentals of Java. The reason we need Java is because without Java you cannot write Selenium code, because Selenium is nothing but a library which works on top of Java environment. To make use of Selenium to do any kind of automation effort, you first need to know underlying Java, and that's what we are trying to do. So we are right now trying to learn the basics of Java, and then once we learn the basics, then we are going to jump onto the automation activity. So what we did really so far is, if I summarize it, we started with our project creation. I will rather write it as well, so that let me create a simple text edit. Okay, so we did project creation, right? We created how to create project, and I asked you guys also to do it. I'm assuming you guys have done it. There are two ways we discussed. One way was project creation, basic project creation, as I would say, it's simple plain Java project in Eclipse or IntelliJ, and second is a Maven project. So we tried to look into both of these. Few of you who joined only last week, maybe this Maven project thing, maybe you have not seen it, but if you go and check the previous videos, you will see we I've also discussed Maven, how to create Maven project. But not to worry, because moving forward, all the Java efforts which you're going to do is going to be on Maven project. So we are going to create this again and again and again. So don't worry if you have not seen it. For now, what we need is only simple basic Java project. It's fine. Then what we did, we created classes, we understood objects, right? Then we discussed about constructors. Then we did overloading, right? We discussed overloading, we discussed constructor overloading, and I think we also discussed method overloading, which is actually entirely the same thing, because constructor is also, as I said, is a special type of method. So if you can overload a constructor, you can also overload a method. So we did kind of checked out for in both. Then what else? Then we did some if else, right? Then we did looping. Then we also did array. But these are not the only thing which we did. We also learned few concepts here and there. We learned something about data types, right? We learned about um, um something about, I not say inheritance, because inheritance is something which we really
String,
did. Sorry.
string.
Yeah, we did about strings. However, strings, there are more to do in strings. We did not do all the strings things, but yeah, we did discuss about how to manage and manipulate, not really manipulate, but how make use of string is nothing, just it comes under data type, which we actually discussed. Then we also talked about access modifiers, right? Access modifiers, like what is private and what is public, what is effect of private and public. So we also discussed that. And not only these topics in isolation, we tried to see their contextual implementation, why and what circumstances you will use what, right? So we also kind of I tried to explain those concepts also. And I'm assuming, and I really want that you guys to complete these, practice this on your own local system. If any one of you have not done it so far, it's going to be more, is going to be tougher for you guys to understand next coming days concepts. So if you are making that mistake of not trying this, see, the best I can do is to ask you to do. I can't enforce you, right? I cannot force you to do it, but I can only motivate you to do it. So I'm really asking you guys, if you want this to be fruitful, these sessions, these automation journey which you have onboarded on, if you want this to be fruitful, you need to practice. There is no point of you attending these sessions. These sessions are useless if you're not doing it. It's better if you're not doing it's better don't attend the sessions. I can even say this. So better try at your own system. This is a tool, this is not a theory, this is something which you have to try on your own. No one can teach you if you can't do it on your own. I'm only here to tell you what to do, but you have to do it. I cannot do it for you. Okay. um, Now this much is, yeah, carry on, someone saying something. Okay, so this much is what we have done so far, and we have lot of examples which we discussed. For if by the way, we have also discussed one important thing called as debugging, if you remember. Debugging and variables evaluation at runtime. Evaluate variable at runtime. We also did discuss this, right? Wherein I was putting breakpoints. Debugging also comes under breakpoints. I mean, breakpoints are important in debugging, right? So we also actually did check that. All right. Now, what is for today? So today my plan is to tell you about inheritance, because it's a very fundamental concept in Java, or rather in any object oriented programming language. And without understanding this, there are a few things which we'll do in Selenium later on, which will make you heavy use of this inheritance thing. And if you don't get this, maybe it will be difficult for you to understand that concept. So I'll try to tell you basics of inheritance. And if you remember, we are not going into depth of all of this. Right now what we are trying to do is not to go in depth, but rather focus on going in breadth. So we are focusing on a broader aspects of things rather than going into a specific concept in depth. So we are not trying to do that. Reason for this is very clear. I always say this. We are not here to do PhD on a specific topics. We are here so that we can efficiently create our automation test pack, right? And to do that, knowledge has to be first breadth wise. And once we understand or know all the concepts, then we have our own whole lifetime to go into depth of individual topics. So our focus is to grow in a breadth wise fashion first, and that's why we need to cover more and more in less time. So we have done this much. Now today we are going to do something about inheritance. I'm going to introduce what inheritance is. Then I'm going to introduce try catch, also called as error or exception handling. And then I'm going to talk about something called as array list. And probably if time allows, then I'm going to talk about hash map. Okay, because without these concepts, again, you will not understand many concepts, many things which we'll do in automation. Okay. Any questions so far in anything, any concern related to whatever things I have just discussed about the topics which we have covered and which we are going to cover? Anything around this?
Hello,
Yeah,
Akash, Satya here.
yes, carry on, carry on.
While go through this inheritance or other topics, can you explain this debugging breakpoints, variable evaluation actually? Uh,
Which one? Breakpoints?
yeah, these points, yeah, variable
Okay.
evaluation and breakpoints. These something,
uh
yeah.
Sorry, I heard about breakpoint. What else did you say?
Yeah, when you're go through the other topics in your terms, can you please show how this debugging and the breakpoints works actually?
Okay, so you want me to talk about breakpoint debugging
Yeah,
again? Okay.
correct, yeah.
Okay. I'll do that. See, debugging and the breakpoint, these are very central to any code. So we'll keep on doing this, and you also have to keep on doing this while you code. And when you get error, that's when you do it. I'll again today also I will try to show this again. While I create examples, I will try to show this again, debugging and breakpoints.
Thank you, Akash.
Okay. All right. So let me first start with inheritance. Okay. Now I have something here as well, and then I'll try to create my own examples. Okay. So we have this folder or package called as ja underscore 8 session. There we have a subfolder called as underscore 2 inheritance. And there's a diagram here. So let me start with the diagram, which is very simple. You see around five diagrams here, right? Now the concept of inheritance is what I have tried to explain in the very beginning initial slide also. If you remember, I have a I've created that. Let me show that. Mm, I think this one. So if you have gone through, I have actually asked you guys to go through this. If you have gone through this, then you will see a concept of classes and objects. And immediately after that, I have introduced inheritance. Sometimes inheritance is considered to be an advanced, so-called advanced concept, but it is not. It is very central, very simple to understand. Okay, it has nothing to do with, it is everything to do with classes and relationship between those classes. So there are two concepts here. One is superclass and then is subclass. Okay, or you can say parent class or subclass, and it's same relationship between father and son. Okay, the same relationship, and name suggests inheritance, right? Inheritance means something, someone is trying to inherit something from its parent. It's that simple. And class, in any object oriented environment, a class represents an entity. So entity can inherit some of its behaviors and attributes from the parent class. And I keep on repeating this again and again. Why? Because when you see a class, right? Let's say I'll go to this class, or let me open the previous classes because you have seen those classes earlier. Let me open this calculator class, for example, right? So when you look at this, this is a class. Now, a class has basically two things, only two things. Class is made up of two things. One is its attributes. Okay. They are called as attributes. You can call it instance variables. They go by many names: attributes, variables, characteristics. They go by many names. Something which defines the entity. For example, if I am a class, then my attributes will be what? Height, weight, right? My DNA, my skin color, my eye color. They all are attributes, which something which defines me. And then second thing about me is my behavior, something which I am capable of doing. Right? So methods are called as behaviors. These are all our behaviors. Okay. Method there go by the name methods or behaviors. Now same thing goes with any class. Whatever class you do, it has attributes as well as it has behaviors or methods. Now the idea is there are some characteristics or something which is unique to me, isn't it? Something which is unique to me. For example, my DNA is unique, my fingerprints are unique, so they are like unique to me. But there could be some more things which is not unique to me, or rather I have inherited it from my parents, right? So this is the relationship between me and my parent, that something is there. For example, most of you either look alike or similar to your father or your mother, right? So that is a relationship. That means you have inherited some looks from your parents, something which defines you, right? Something, your face structure, contours of your face, maybe your hairs, your nose, right? Something is inherited either from your father or from your mother. So that is something called as attribute. So you have inherited some of the attributes from your parents. Similar to that, there are one more thing called as behaviors or methods. There could also be something, some behavior which your parent has, and you also have inherited it from them. For example, your father is very has very uh, gets mad at at small things, very low temperament, right? Maybe you also can inherit that. So that's a behavior which you have inherited. Maybe your mother is a good dancer, then maybe you can also inherit the same behavior, same capability, right? So the idea which I'm trying to put here is there is a possibility and there can be a relationship between two classes where the child class is inheriting either the attributes or the behavior from its parent, and that relationship is called as inheritance. I assume I have not over explained it. The concept is actually very simple to understand: parent child relationship. So, if I go ahead and go and create a class here to demonstrate this, okay, so I can also talk about, let me maybe create a class here, a simple class, or rather I have a class here. So let me first show you that. So if you see this class, this is a vehicle class. It has one behavior, but it has no attributes, right? So when I go to car, now the car here, if you notice, the car here is extending the vehicle, right? So what I'm trying to explain, say here is the car is a type of vehicle, right? So a car is a type of vehicle. That means there is a vehicle has a behavior, that is engine, that all vehicle has to have engines, right? And this car is extending it. So the car will have start, stop, and fill fuel, but will also have a method called as engine, right? So what will happen, let me show you what will happen. So if I go and create a class here, for example, say runner class. I'll simply write here public static void main, and I will start creating object out of it. So imagine that this is not there. Imagine this is just a simple car. So when I go and create an object of this, what will happen? I will say one car is equal to, sorry, object is equal to new one car. All right. Now when I do this and when I say object dot, I can see three methods here: stop, fill fuel, and start, which is quite obvious because I am just creating the object of this, and this object has three behaviors. So I can just create the object of car and then call these methods to perform my operations, isn't it? But what if I go and extend this? So now what I'm doing, I'm doing underscore one car extends zero vehicle. So when I do an object dot here, I can see one more method called as engine, which was not there before I extended the class with its parent class, right? The moment I extended my car class with the vehicle class, I'm seeing this method here. So the idea is very simple. Idea is, if I am extending a class, if I'm extending a class, that means all the behaviors which are present here and which are not private will be inherited to the child class. So in this case, this is a child class and this becomes a parent class. It is something as if this method has been copied from here and pasted here. It works something like that, because when you go and create the object of this, when you go and create the object of this, you can see this method, but this method is not present here. Rather, this method is present inside the parent class here. All right. Any questions in this? You understood the child and parent class relationship?
Yeah, it is clear.
Okay, good. So that's how basically the relationship between parent and child class works. Now the idea is why we do it, right? So primary reason in coding environment we do it is mostly for reusability, because we want to structure our code. We don't want that the same method or same code is applied in multiple places in multiple different class files. Okay, so we don't want it, because for example, let's say take this car, right? Let's say I want to have another instance of the car. For example, it could be different kind of car. If I have to go, for example, hatchback, for example, sedan, the different kind of cars possible. So if I go and implement engine in all of them, that means I am doing duplicacy, isn't it? So if I do this engine, I have to apply here. Then if I have create, let's say this is sedan. If I'm hatchback, then there also I have to implement. There's another type of car. Then again electric car. Then again I have to put this method there. So I am kind of repeating my engine method multiple places. That's giving me too much maintenance overhead later on, which I don't want to have. So idea is simple. if you want to introduce more reusability in your framework, in more reusability in your code, you look for these kind of relationships between your classes. By the way, the idea is, the original fundamentals is when there is a requirement comes in, you first create classes on paper, you design the system, you create classes, and while you create classes, you establish relationships between these classes. You create a UML diagram, it's called as UML diagram. So in a UML diagram, you create class diagram. So let me show some hint of what is a UML diagram. Let me show you that. So a typical UML diagram looks like, these are not, this is the right one. So it looks like this. So people first, the developer first have to create these kind of class diagrams, and they establish the relationships. For example, this diagram which you see, there are one to one, these are one to many, this is association, aggregation, composition, the different kinds of, it's called a UML language. You have to understand what this diamond means, what is this empty diamond means. So these kind of relationship you is something which you have to uh, kind of establish first before you actually go and create these kind of classes. So these relationships have to be defined here. Once you design the whole class diagram, design the whole system in the format of class diagrams, then you come here and start creating it. So this has to be thought out first. You design the system first, you design the classes, you design the methods, what kind of attributes it's going to have, what kind of methods going to have, what is the relationship between two classes, how many interfaces you will have. So there are all this you need to first create. Once you are done with it, you have established the relationship between classes, then you kind of implement them. Okay, so this is how basically the whole process of code creation works. Of course, in a lot of projects no one goes through this, they just start creating, and in our case also we won't be going towards doing this and then coming here. But it's always a good practice to do that first. It's just a bit time consuming, so people kind of don't do it, and a lot of people don't are not even aware of this process. uh, Never mind. So this is the overall concept of inheritance. That's how it works. The idea is simple. Whatever is in the parent class, once you inherit it in child class, it will come here, and then you can start using it. When you create the object of this, then you can start using it. Now another thing here is the concept of multi-level inheritance. So what you see, let me open this diagram again. So you see there's single inheritance. What we saw in vehicle and car, it is an example of single inheritance. Now there can be hierarchical inheritance. That means one class is extended in multiple classes, which is also okay, right? This is car, this is could be something, this could something else, this is vehicle. Multiple classes are inheriting from a single class. This is also permissible. It is allowed in Java. Multi-level, again same thing. We have a class, this class inheriting this class inheriting this class. The example which you have here, for example, vehicle is the parent class, car is extending the vehicle, then we have a BMW which is extending one car. That means this is this is extending this, and this is extending this. So this is an example of multi-level. So this is your vehicle, this is your car, this is your BMW. So this is multi-level inheritance example which has been implemented here. Now there are two more things. One is hybrid inheritance and multiple inheritance. Now this is a problem. Okay. Now I'll not go into these details. You don't have to worry too much about hybrid and multiple for now. Rather, we will focusing on only these three types for now. So this is simple example. This is hierarchical. This is multi-level. Most of the time, you will be working on these things. These are, in some sense, there are problems associated with these, but we'll not go into those details. And this could be more complex for you to understand for now. So we still will not. I'll not go into in details of what is the exact problem with these. So better not focus on it. Just you guys just have to focus on the single inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and multi-level inheritance. Okay. Uh, any questions in this so far? Then I will continue. One last thing which I have to tell in this inheritance thing is, uh, all classes, no matter what classes you make, has always has a parent class. The parent class name is object. So for example, if I go here and I will go and create an object, for example, a runner class, I'll go here and say object dot, sorry, not here. If I say object dot, you see I have IC methods stop, fill, fuel, start, and engine. So these four I am aware of because I have created these. These three are here and the engine is here. But from where these other methods are coming, for example, get class equals hash code to string notify, where are these coming from? Right? Till wait, where are these coming from? So the idea is no matter which class you are creating, even this class which you have here has a parent class called as x, called as object class. So this class is the parent of all, something like god, right? Because if we say everything originated from god, then this is your god in the analogy of Java. So object is a parent of all classes, and these method which you see here originated from here. You see toString, notify, all of these methods are present inside the object class. You press a control and hover on this and go here, you will see this object class. It's a sort of misnomer in the sense like the class name is object, right? But that's how it is. The object is a class which contains all the basic methods which are inherited by all the classes of any class which you go and create. Okay, so next time when you see a dot, when you see these methods, and you will see these methods everywhere, where are these defined? You should ask yourself, and these are defined. The answer to this is these are defined inside a class called as object. All right, so this is the last concept I want to talk about in inheritance. Of course, there will be some assignments I'm going to give you around this. uh, these in itself are your assignments. You can actually go and create these. So you can create a vehicle, you can create your car, extend this, and just try to imitate what's written here. Then you create a BMW class and just try to, oh, I missed one important concept here called as overriding. Now the idea is, I will try to explain overriding here. So we have vehicle called as engine, then we have a car which has three methods, and one method is coming from where? One method is coming from this um uh, uh, this parent class. Now when I do a get, when I do here, when I say object dot engine, and when I run this, let's run this also. If I go and run this, I'll get vehicle engine. That means this engine method is present where? In the vehicle class. So when I do this, it takes me to the vehicle method. Sorry, vehicle class method, engine method. It means this method is being called. When I simply do object.engine, it is this method which is being called. But sometimes I don't want it. Sometimes, for example, uh, my father has a bad habit of smoking, right? And I don't want it. I have inherited it, but I don't want it. I want to change it. So what I'll do, I will try to override it. How will I override it? In Java, by the way, this was a bad example, but still, I can simply write the same method here. I'll just copy this, for example. I will paste it here, and I will simply write at the rate override on top of it. So what will happen now? What will happen now is, previously, if you remember, previously when I was running this class, running the method engine, the parent class method engine was being called. But when I run it now, it is not triggering this method. The same call, I have not changed anything here. The same method call is now triggering the overridden method and not the one which is mentioned in the vehicle class. So this is called as overriding. Make note, this is different than overloading. Overloading is a different concept. Overriding is a concept which is applicable only in the case when you are inheriting something from somewhere. So in this case, we are inheriting engine method from the parent, But in our car class, we have overridden it, right? So once you override something, it overrides the parent behavior. So I have overridden, and you always override something which is defined in the parent, something defined in the parent, and you use the same method signature. That's how it knows that you are trying to override the method. Now there are few cases here, so let me not write override here. If I don't write at the rate override there, it will still override. You see this symbol? That means it is still overriding it. So at writing at the rate override is not mandatory. It is rather a check, a safety check. I'll tell you why it's a safety check. This is your engine. That means I still get a symbol here. Now, what if someone wants to override it, but he makes a mistake in the name, or maybe by mistake he forgets I, and then he still would feel I am overriding, right? So this idea of putting an annotation called as override is a compile time safety. That means now it is giving me error. It's saying you want this method to override something which is defined in the parent, but I'm not able to find any method in the parent class which is named as this. So this is a compile time safety. At the override annotation is used for compile time safety, because if you don't use it, it will still work. It is still overridden. Okay. Now if I write this, it is safe, because if I write this and I'm not getting error, that means I'm really practically in all truthness, I am overriding a method which is present in the parent class. So that's the significance of writing the at the rate override. It is not mandatory. As long as you see this method, it is overriding. As long as you this arrow, sometimes in some editors you won't see this arrow, most of them will show you this. But if you're not seeing this, that means you have made a mistake. It means you're not overriding anything. That means you have done some typo mistake here and there. All right, guys. So this was about inheritance. You try these examples on your own again. Look at these diagrams if you may. You can check these. Try to read more. This is again, I insist you guys to don't entirely depend on what I'm teaching you. I am showing you things, few examples, which you should follow. Of course you should do what I'm telling you to do, but you should also do your own research. You should also go and read over, just Google and internet. You will get millions of different kind of tutorials. Go through them also, and try as much as you can on your IDE or Eclipse or your IntelliJ. All right. So, any questions in the inheritance before we move on to the next topic?
No.
Okay. I assume this is pretty simple. I think.
Hello,
Yeah. Yeah, carry on.
Akash in chat on question asked actually.
Oh, okay. Thank you for highlighting. What are benefits of object class? Mm, so the benefits. Okay, so if I talk about benefit, by the way, I'm not the creator of this programming language, but I think the primary benefit is that you don't have to write the methods which are very generic in nature. For example, if I go in the, or rather, let me simply write extends object. So you see these some methods here: hash code, equals, cloning, to string, converting object to string, notify, waits. So these are some basic methods which the creator of Java might have thought through, thinking this would be these methods should be available in all the classes. So there is no specific benefits per se for having an object class as a parent of all classes. As far as I understand it, there are no exact benefits, but yeah, in many cases, many design patterns, many ways this becomes very very useful, which we're going to talk about later. But in many design patterns, this is central. This idea of having an object class as a parent is a central now. You cannot now remove it. I don't know if I have done justice to the answer or question which you asked, but that's, I think, the best explanation I can give for now. Right. So, uh, okay, all right. So I'll move on to the next topic, which is actually the exception handling. Now, I want to talk something about this because we will be using it a lot while we code, and this comes and this is required because there are cases where you write something, but while you're writing it, there's no error, but you have made a mistake while writing it. Even though you're not getting any error while you're writing, there's no compile time error, but it will throw an error when you actually run it. And one of this very simple example is division or division by zero of any number, because this is mathematically not possible. You cannot divide something which not with nothing, right? When you say 9 divided by 1, it gives you 9. That means only one piece of, you want one piece of 9, so you will get 9. But you when say 9 divided by 0, it means you want 0 piece of 9, which is, it doesn't make any mathematical sense. So this in programming, also in all the programming language, logically this gives a runtime, this throws an exception, a runtime exception, right? So that is what we are trying to do here. So the idea is, whatever code you're writing, it you do.
Hey guys, just hold for a second now. Uh, let just Akash sir join very quick once again.
Hey guys, can you hear me now? All right, so we have try catch block in Java. The reason we have it here is so that when you write your code, you and there is a likelihood that there is an error, the code will not stop there. Because the idea is, when or in Java, what happens if there is a line which is throwing an error, the code stops there, and we don't want my code to stop. I want my code to continue and execute next statements, rather just stop at specific point. So I don't want it. So that's the reason we have this concept of try and catch. uh, what it does is, uh, where whatever line which you are writing in Java, whatever a single line or a group of statements which you think could lead to an exception. If you think something could lead to an exception, then you kind of wrap it around a block called as try block. That means you are instructing the executor of Java. You are instructing it that when you execute the code, you try to run some code. If everything is fine, it's okay. But if something goes wrong here, don't stop, rather go to the catch block, right? So this is what try and catch blocks is. For example, in this case, if you see, if I have int a equal to 9 by 0, this is an error. If I'm not attaching it with or not wrapping it inside my try block, then the execution will stop here. This line will throw an exception which needs to be handled. So this execution will just stop here, and my next sequence of lines will not execute it, which is a bad thing to have, right? Because I want these lines to be executed as well. But if I just simply not do this, then these will not be executed. That's the reason I have put here inside try block. So if an error gets thrown here, it will go and catch again, it will go and get caught inside this block, and these lines will rather be executed instead of this. So let me show you uh, by running this. So we'll say when I run this class, it will have A, B, and C. Then it will try to run this, and if there is an error here, it will throw this line. And once this is executed, it will then start executing this. So I'll tell you both the cases. So you simply let me, oh, there it go. sorry, I was here. So if I go and run this, right click run, you see I have an ABC printed. That means I have ABC printed. Then it tried to execute this, which threw an error. So what happened? It came here, executed this, and it printed this line. That's what you are seeing here. This proves that this line was not executed. Immediately it jumped here. To prove it further, let me print another line here. I'll say system.out.println I am executed. What do you think? Will this line get executed? Can anyone tell me, will this be executed or not?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone saying yes to this? Anyone saying yes, this line will be executed?
Yes, I think this should be executed. This should be print
Okay. Okay.
because 9 by 0, this line will throw exception. Then it will move to the next line.
Next
So
line.
it will.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know the answer of this. Let's see what happened. So when I say run, oops. So it did not print this. Right? So the first answer was right. The second one was wrong. Why? Because the idea is try the whole block, not a single line. So try to run the whole block. So what happens when this line gets executed? All the other lines which is inside the same block will not get executed. Okay, so this will not be executed because the error originated in this block. Since it's originated in this block, it jumped straight from here to the catch block, and that's the reason it wasn't executed. Another example for this is if I play around with this again, and let's say I'm not wrapping it around any of the exception handling. Okay, so when this happens, now ABC will be printed, int 9 by 0 will be executed, and this will throw an error and the code will just stop running. So if I just run this, that's it. So ABC exception thrown. Right? That's the danger and damage which the exception do to your program. That means it will just cease to run, which is a bad thing, right? That's the reason we actually wrap our code, or rather problematic code, with exceptions. With exception handling. All right. Now there are many cases possible here, different cases, different try nested cases, try and nested tries. For example, if I come here and let's assume we have int b is equal to 9 by 0 here also. Right? Now if I go and run this, what will happen? If I go and do a run here, again the same problem. Right? Even though I have a try catch block, again these lines did not get executed. So what happened here? Let's see what happened. So this is how I can also explain the debugging. If someone asks about debugging also, let's start debugging this. So I'll put a breakpoint here. I put a breakpoint here. Okay. So if I go and now do a right click, do a debug as, it stopped here. Then I do a resume. So either it will come here or it should come here, right? Either it will come to this line or it should come to this line. So if I go and click on run, resume program, you see this line, it did not come to this line, it rather came here. It has come to the catch block, but there is another problem because inside the catch block, I still have an error. Right? So if I do a resume again, the execution stopped because now this is an error which has no subsequent try catch block. You see? So it's not that once I put a try catch, everything is solved. No, because if you are writing something in the catch block, which itself is a problem, then you have to catch that as well. So what to do? Can put another try here, and I can put it inside this, and I can have another catch here. I can put E1 because these variables have to be separate, so I cannot just write E. Exception is, by the way, is nothing but a class. It's nothing but a class. Okay, so don't worry what this is. So this is still as a class, you see, and I am creating an object of it. So I'm writing exception E1. That's a syntax which you have to follow if you want to use a try catch. Then here inside this, I can write exception is caught, the same statement maybe. I'll put this here. Okay, now I'm sorted. So now if I go and print this again, so same thing here, let's put it here. Let's put it here. Let me debug it again. So I'll do a resume. The error came. This line did not get executed. Error came. Now it reached here. Now here also I'm getting an error. So once I get an error here, it will go and execute this. So if you notice, if I just do a resume, it has come here now. It has not stopped the execution. It's still working. Then it will just come here, execute it. So now I can see everything. I can see ABC, exception occurred to be integer A. So this got printed. Then again, this got printed. And then below lines are printing DEF. All right. Any doubts in this? So this is an overall concept of try catch. There's one more concept here called as finally, which is something you write. Hello, anyone wishes to ask anything?
Hello.
Yeah,
Okay, Satya here.
yes, Satya, tell me.
Can we place a multiple try catch blocks actually in the code? Actually, that is a good form, or we can keep only one try catch for the particular class, for that one class.
Again, it depends on the situation you are encountering. Sometimes people do multiple try catch blocks here and there. Try not to do this, but sometimes it is a need and necessity. There's no right and wrong here. Depending on what kind of problem you are trying to solve, what kind of exception you're trying to solve, what kind of framework you are writing, code you're writing, it depends on that. Programmatically, it is possible. There's no right or wrong.
Okay, it will come. We can place any place, right? Like outside the method, or we can cover the methods also inside the try catch block, like that.
See, nothing can go outside the method. Everything has to be inside method. That's the rule in Java, right? You cannot write try catch block here.
Okay, okay, fine.
Okay, so everything has to be inside a method. So whatever writing inside a method, that you can put try catch. So you can put try catch in for loops. For example, you can do for int I is equal to 0, right? And then you can say I less than, let's say 8, I plus plus. And then next example I will take is for if condition. So if true, so there are two examples I'm taking, right? So
Okay.
how you can put try here? You can put try here.
Top.
You can put this inside for catch exception E. So you can do this. You can do this. You
Okay.
can do this also. Come on. You see? So try wrapped for wrapped around try. And in this case,
Okay.
inside for you have try catch.
Okay.
So anything is possible depending on what kind of code you are writing, right?
Okay.
Inside this is a try catch. Inside this, you have this. Then you can have this also. I'll tell you more complex example, because since you asked this, let me keep on writing so that all doubts goes away on where to use this, where not to use this. Everything is possible. You see, this is also
Okay.
possible. Then okay,
Okay. Yeah. Fine.
you got the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I got it.
More complexity. Okay, so the
Okay.
idea is you wrap the code inside try. Wherever you can, wherever you want to do, you can do it. No one is stopping you to do it. You can do it anywhere. It just, the code has to be wrapped around try, so that if it throws an error, you can handle it. You don't, the code doesn't stop. Who is drawing on my screen? I think someone is drawing. Never mind. uh, I don't know how to anyone can see this, right? Someone draw a circle, or rather a fish. It looks like a fish. Everyone seeing this, or it's just me? Okay.
We can see it.
Yeah, Pranali, I think Pranali did this. Pranali, if you can erase this, if not, no, don't know how to do it, then let it be. It's fine. All right. So what I was saying, yeah. So try catch. This is how try catch works. Of course, there is some more concepts in try catch. Something called as final. That is something which will execute no matter what. So when you say try catch, and you can put another block here called as final, this means whatever it is, you should be able to execute this. Okay, guys, are you with me here?
Yeah, yes, Akash.
Okay. I thought my voice is not reaching you. Never mind. So basically, that's how try catch works. There are more complex examples of try catch is also there. For example, instead of writing exception, you can write null pointer exception. Now what is this? Again, it requires some explanation, which we will see later on when we actually do the actual automation work. These kind of things will be there, so I'm going to cover these small things, this in detail things when we actually going to code. So I'm not going to talk about very all the details of all the topics. This is what we agreed on since the very beginning. So I have told you about try catch, how to do a try catch thing. It has lot of details, like what you can put here, what is null pointer exception, different kinds of exceptions, and this and that we will do while we code or while we automate the test cases. So we need to reach there faster, and all the other concepts of Java around different concept Java will do when we actually create these automation framework, create the test cases. Okay, but having said that, I would ask you guys to try this, ask you guys to go through these examples and try this. If I just give you an example, just explanation for this specific class as well. So you see this division int a and b. So what I'm saying here is try to divide a and b, but if you're not able to but if there is an error can be of different types. So exception is not always of one specific type, it could be of different types. So I can actually determine what kind of exception will be thrown and what should I do once that exception is thrown. So I'm saying if while dividing I'm getting an arithmetic exception, I should do this. If while dividing I get a null pointer exception, then do this. If I don't know what kind of exception it is, it comes under the generic exception, which is exception E. So this will be printed. So I want you guys to go through these classes and try running them. Just do run them, put breakpoints, see how the pointer moves and why it is moving there. Play around with it. That's from where the learning would come. You just watching this will not help. Try to run these examples, copy, download this code inside your system and try to run them. Okay, so this acts as your assignment as well. Try to run these. Try to code this in your own system, watch it, code this. Go over internet, check the line, don't copy paste the whole class or method. Try to see it and then just write it down on your own. This gives your some uh, this will bring your fingers out of the inertia of not coding. So try doing that. All right, so I will be, after the call I will be sending these links as well as like what, because there are lot many classes here, you might get confused which one to do, which one not to do. So I will post these links for you guys, specific class files which you have to try on your own in your own system. Okay, now there are two more topics I have to talk. One is about array list and second is about hash map. So I will not be talking about hash map today. Hash map we'll talk about tomorrow, but I'll just give a small briefing about array list, right? Again, I'll go and create a class. I'll name it as, let's say, array list. I'll go and create method public static void main. So you remember we were creating variables previously, right? We were saying int var, then int var1, and we are assigning values to it also. Int var3, sorry, 2 7, int var3 is equal to 8, or rather let's say 5. Now then we found a better way of doing this. What we used arrays, right? So we said int of array arr, better way of doing, the way of saving variables or saving integers. We said int arr is equal to, we saved them inside 8, 9, 7 and 5. So this is of course a better way of doing it, isn't it? Because we don't have to have these many variables, rather we are pointing all of them in a collection, in a set of in a grouping of, rather I should say, that use the right word, so grouping of grouping, I mean collect in a grouping and then assign a variable to it, right? So this arr is a type of array of integer which holds these values. But there is one more way to do it, and it's called as the collections way. Now collection is a huge topic in Java, and almost in all the interviews that definitely will be a question from this will definitely will be asked to you. It's that important. It's not only from interview perspective, it's for the working perspective. Almost all the thing which you'll see around yourself when you start Java, you will see some implementation of collection happening here and there. Because what is a program? A program is nothing but a data structure and some logic. All programs are like this only. Some data is being saved here and there, and then some logic you are using to manipulate that data. So the collections, in a way, collection is a way in Java to store the values, store the data which you can be processed, which you can process in your logic. Now that data you can save in many ways. There are different ways of saving that data, right? Depending on what you want to do with the data. If you want to search something in the data, then a specific type of collection is good. When you want to read, then specific type of collection is good. When you want to write, specific kind of is good. When there's a relationship between multiple data, then there is special kind is there. A special type of collection is there for you to use. So this comes under the purview of data structures. So in collections, in the collection is a specific kind of interface and set of classes and interfaces in Java, which gives you this flexibility of storing the data in multiple formats and different kind of format based on your need. So there are examples. There are something called as array list. There is something called as hash map. There's something called as tree. There's something called as set, something called as vector, called as stack, queue. Okay, so there are different kinds of data structures possible, right? Linked list. Few of these, if you are from computer background, you must have studied these in data structure course in your college days, I hope. So linked list, different kinds of data structures are available. To start with, because it's a very huge topic, so again I don't want to flood you with all this information because you cannot process it in this phase of your learning. So I will be just talking about two important ones, which is array list and hash map, which is kind of enough for you to do basic to intermediate level programming and coding, as at least in the beginning. Of course, vectors, stack, they are useful. Linked list, they are useful, but in certain cases, not in all cases. So before you move on to these one, it's advisable you just focus on these two, array list and hash map, and slowly, gradually, once you get more hands-on on this Java thing, then you will understand it better. So first, I'm going to talk about array list, and then I'm going to show the hash map. But hash map we'll skip for today. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So array list, how it works. pretty simple. I'm just telling you how you will create a array list and how you will add values out of it and how you will get values out of it. That is what I'm going to show without and skipping all the theory and this and that, inner working of this and that. You don't want to, trust me, you don't want to know that. No one is going to ask you that. You need to know, first of all, you need to know how you're going to make use of it and program using that data structure, using that collection. You write a program and manipulate the data present inside that collection. That is what you need to know. Diary, that is what you need to know. So we'll I'm going to show you how to create, how to put values, and how to get values out of it. Okay, so let's start. I will go create an data, sorry, an object of it. I will explain what this is in a while. I'll create arr list, new array list. When you see this error, it will ask you, I want to import this. I will say yes, I want to import this. What happened? Yeah, imported. So you see, it has been imported here. Now let me explain what this is. And this fish is really bothering me. I don't know how to remove this. Let me see. Mm, I don't know how to do it. Never mind. So you see this statement. This simply means that I am creating an object, because wherever I use a new keyword, that means I am creating an object. Array list is what? It's a type of class. You remember how we created the car object? We said uh, car, name of the class, name of the object, new keyword, and the name of the class, and then ending with two brackets. Same thing I'm trying to do here. Array list is a class, arr list is an object name, new is the object, new is the keyword which you use to create a new object, and then again the name of the class, right? And then I am ending with this with two brackets. But what the hell is this? What the hell is this? This is called as generics. Okay. Again, a separate topic. What generics is, we'll see it, the application of it. But the idea of generics is simple. That is type safety. You remember when I was writing ARR, I was also mentioning integer. That means I was dictating that if I'm creating an ARR, an array object, it will always have integer values. So if I dare to put a string value here, compiler will say no, change this. It's not allowed, right? So I cannot do it. This is how type safety is being implemented in Java. The same concept we need when we actually create a object of specific type. So let's say if I remove this, let's say remove this, I can actually add any value to this object, any value. For example, if I say arr list, by the way, how do you add it? You say dot and you write call a method add and you write Akash. It's allowed. When I say arr list dot add 3, it's allowed. When I say arr list dot add and I say true, that is a boolean, it's allowed. So this will still work. So if I simply say system dot out dot println and write arr list dot to string, and if I, let's say, run this to show you what it is printing, if I just run this, so it's printing Akash 3 and true, right? Which is this thing, Akash 3 and true, isn't it? Which is okay, but when you actually real time, when you code in real time, you don't want this kind of behavior. You want something to be precise when you code. So when I write this, when I create this object, I need to be sure what kind of data I want to store in this. If you want to store integer, boolean, and string, everything, it's okay, it's your choice. That means you have consciously made that decision. But if you when you create a collection and you know that it should always have an integer in it, or it should always have a string in it, the way you did it here, so that no other value was allowed, then you have to specify it based on a concept called as generics. So if I say here store integer, that means only integers can be saved. So it's immediately giving me compile time error. So it is saving compile. This is compiler's way of saving me from making mistakes. So compiler have just saved me that you should not be adding integers. Sorry, should not be adding boolean or string or anything other than integer. If I say string, it will give an error in these three. If I say boolean, it will give error in these three. So this is the concept of generic. That's how basically we use when you create collection object, you always will have to pass something. This it is mandatory. No, it's not mandatory. You see, if I don't do this, then it will allow all. But it is a dangerous thing to do when you code, because by default it should be, you should have to define the type of the data which you're storing. It should not have a general storage system. It should have be very specific. Okay. Now everything works exactly the same. If you want to parse an array, if you want to get a value out of an array, what you do arr 0. When you do arr 0, you will get this 8. You get arr 1, you get 9. You get arr 2, you get 7. Same thing happens. It maintains the order of insertion. Here how we are putting in, we are adding, so it is dynamically growing. Here in typical primitive array, default version of array in Java, they are not dynamically grown. You cannot dynamically change the size of the array. But that restriction has been overcome by making use of array list. So it's always a good practice to use array list instead of using an array. Okay, so when I say array list, arr list, I am adding the value, and because I am saying this is an integer, so I can only store integer values here. I can say 3, 4, and 5. So these are maintained in order. So always the order of insertion is preserved. Guys, can you stop your video? Someone opened his video. Right, so you have to preserve the order of the insertion order will be preserved when you use array list. So this will be 0, this will be 1, this will be 2. How to get these values out? You simply write array list dot get and index. You put the index here, you will say 0, it will give you the 0th value. It will give you, if you do a 1, it will give you the first value. If you do, it will give you the second value, right? Or you can also do this in loop. So you can also do for int I is equal to 0, I less than arr list dot size, gives you the size of the array list, I plus plus, and you simply do system.println, and here you have to put I instead of 0, and you don't need to print all this. So this will simply print all the values one after another. Okay, I can simply remove this and I'll show you the execution of it. You see, it has printing all the values one after another here. Any questions in this so far, guys? Okay, I see some chat. Array list dot add, through add we adding collection of values in array list, right? Yes, correct, that's true. So instead of doing this or doing this, we are adding these values to this object array list, and that is what we are getting when we do run this loop. Arr list dot get I will give me the 0th, first, and second. This is what is array list. I can also show this while putting a, let me debug it. So if I go in the array list, open array list, you see 0, 1, and 2. We have 3, 4, 5 values added here. 0, 1, and 2. Okay. What is the next question? Unable to hear. Okay. Please explain polymorphism. Okay, not for today, but tomorrow I'll try to touch base on this as well. Overloading and overriding. This is an example of in some sense, an example of polymorphism only. So we did checked overloading. We did talked about overriding. This is nothing but an example of polymorphism. Of course, there are different aspects of polymorphism, different ways by which you can achieve it and do it. And I'll talk about it tomorrow if possible. But when I talked about overloading and overriding, this is an example. Overriding is not really the example of it, but when you uh, create the object and store it, the value of that object in the parent object, then that becomes example of runtime polymorphism, which we'll talk about anyway when we talk about Selenium. But simple example of polymorphism is your example of overloading. That means the same method name but can do different things. uh, I think these are the questions I can see in the chat. Any other questions, guys? Because I am done with what I wanted to cover today.
Hello,
Yeah, carry on.
Akash Satya here.
Yes.
This array list